Good evening. Welcome to Dominican University and the Leadership Lecture Series in partnership with Book Passage. I'm Sam Beldona, Dean and Professor of Strategic Management at the Borowski School of Business at Dominican University of California. This lecture series is a program of Dominican's Institute for Leadership Studies, which is a center for leadership development. ILS provides education and training for students and professionals to become better leaders and offer public forums like this one. Tonight's program welcomes Khizr Khan in conversation with Bill Petrocelli. Our season sponsor for 2017-2018 Leadership Lecture Series is Private Ocean, which is one of the oldest and largest privately held wealth management firms in Marine. Private Ocean has been named 7 times by Worth magazine as one of the top 100 registered investment advisors nationwide. Private Ocean is a 2-time recipient of the prestigious Schwab Impact Award. Private Ocean also has been named as the best wealth management firm by North Bay Business Journal. Thank you, Private Ocean, for continuing to help bring our community together. Joining us this evening to introduce tonight's speakers is Dr. Susan Duval-Dixon, Partner and Chief Operating Officer of Private Ocean Wealth Management. Susan is a proud alumna of Dominican, and she teaches leadership in the business school. Please welcome Dr. Susan Duval-Dixon.
Welcome, everyone. We're so glad you're here tonight. So our guest tonight is a proud Pakistani-born lawyer, perhaps best known for debating with an American president. Khizr Khan was born in 1950, the eldest of 10 children to poultry farming parents in Gwadranwala, you're going to have to forgive my pronunciation here, a city in rural Pakistan. As a university student, Khizr read the Declaration of Independence, seeking the American dream for his wife and their 3 sons. Khizr moved his family to Boston in 1980. He put himself through Harvard Law School while holding down 2 jobs. Pretty impressive. In 1986, Khizr and Ghazala became American citizens. Their middle son, Humayun, joined the United States Army and rose to the rank of captain and status of a war hero. Tragically, Humayun was killed in 2004 in a suicide attack in Iraq and was posthumously awarded the Purple Heart and the Bronze Star. In 2015, Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton called Khizr's son the best of America. Khizr, a Gold Star father, spoke at the Democratic National Convention, I'm sure you'll all remember that, last year. A Muslim American, Khizr criticized Republican president nominee Donald Trump for his tough stance on immigration by defending immigration as a way and means to pursue the American dream. Tonight, he will talk about the hope and sacrifice this takes. He is currently involved with the University of Virginia's ROTC program, and is working as a legal consultant. Joining him in conversation on stage is Bill Petrocelli, former Deputy Attorney General for the, it's been a really long day. Former Deputy Attorney General for the State of California, author and co-owner of Book Passage. Please join me in welcoming to Angelico Hall, Bill and our honored guest, Khizr.
Thank you very much. And I could say to my colleague here that he won the hearts of the audience before he's ever said a word. That was a wonderful reception. Thank you all for doing that. And a well-deserved one. I have been reading Khizr Khan's book, An American Family, a memoir of hope and sacrifice, and absolutely captivated by it, and I'll tell you why in just a second. But I want to mention that he also has a second book here. Pardon the notes sticking out here. This is Our Constitution, a book designed for younger students, maybe junior high or high school level, a book about just how the Constitution is put together. Between these two books, he is making a big change in this country. And I also should add that he just informed me that all of the proceeds from both of these books are going to the Khizr Khan Foundation, named in the name of his son who was killed in the Iraq War. And we'll get a little more of that as we go on in the conversation. So I urge you, if you don't already have both books, you might want to try pick them up on your way out. They're for sale right outside. This is a story. It's an amazing story, really. It's a story that almost anyone who has grown up in this country, was born in this country, should read, because it tells what America looks like and feels like from someone coming from another place, coming here. And it's really kind of an amazing view. It's in a way it's something we have to live up to, because people around the world look at what America is and purports to be, and it means a lot in terms of hope. And I have to say, Khizr Khan, since he has been in America, has exemplified everything that what America strives to do, just in the life that he and his family have put together here. Let me just start with this. Maybe if you could talk a little bit about your childhood growing up in Pakistan, particularly talk about your grandfather, who had a wonderful influence on you.
First, thank you for the honor of your company, and I'm delighted and I'm grateful. I have had most blessed life from childhood onward. My grandfather has had amazing impact on my growing up and learning about the world and my life. We grew up in a modest family environment. We did not have electricity when I was growing up. It hadn't gotten to our part of the country. So our routine was, instead of condemning that environment, we made the most of it, and that was that every night we used to celebrate, especially the moonlit nights. He would come to my bedside and he would read me stories. Sometime he would literally read, if the moonlight was strong enough, he would read it to me. Other days he would paraphrase what he knew. And some of the stories have remained with me. One, and I explain most of those stories in the book, sharing how those childhood values have remained with me. One quotation that used to be quite frequently repeated to me was, "So what if you're thirsty? Be river for others." And it had such a profound impact on my life, and so on. So I remember we're getting into the holiday season of sharing. As a Muslim, we used to celebrate start of Ramadan, end of Ramadan, and families would cook meals and feast and all that. And some years we wouldn't cook anything. And I was, I think, 10 or 11 years old. I used to get annoyed, and I would ask my grandmother. I was living with my grandparents, and said, "Why we haven't cooked anything?" And first year when I asked that question, I wasn't given any answer. So we are going to go to your parents, meaning my parents' home, and we will eat there. We were not that lack of resources, but the next year, same thing. So I asked them, I said, you have to tell me why we are not making food for our festival. It's absolutely necessary. So then my blessed grandmother told me that whatever we had, we divided that into 4 portions. And last night, your grandfather took it to those who did not have anything. Meaning sharing was so important that celebrating, enjoying a feast and all that meant nothing to him and to my grandmother, sharing it with those that did not have, especially with young children. So it was such circumstances, meaning that lack of resources did not mean much at that time. I grew up in that environment. Sharing was more important. Caring for others was more important, and whatever modest means we had must be shared. And so that is how my childhood was. And the second thing that he hammered into my mind was that a person is not complete unless your education is complete.
You repeat that in the book, and to great effect.
Exactly. To again and again, he would remind me that a person is not complete until his education is complete. So I grew up under those circumstances.
The sharing thing is a wonderful part of the book because it comes up again and again in your story. And not only, well, first of all, people who share things with you. There are several times in the story where you are going to a new country, or you've arrived somewhere, or you've run out of money, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, there's a stranger who appears, who takes you in, who does something nice for you, but more important than that, well, not more important than that, but equally important, there are so many instances where you and your family have just taken people in and done exactly the same thing for them, and it's really a lesson. I think that a lot of people do that to some extent, or one extent or another, but to see it done as part of your everyday life, as part of your being, as part of your value system, is really it's very, very moving. Let me ask you about this. You, at one point, now here you're a student from a farm family in Pakistan who hadn't traveled very far or anywhere before that. At some point you came across, I guess you were in college, the Declaration of Independence. And if you could just sort of repeat the impact that had on you, the very first sentence.
This is my first introduction to America. This is 1972. Sometimes people wonder and ask, what is this so much passion for Constitution, for our Bill of Rights, for our Declaration? Because that is how I learned about this blessed nation, through these documents. This is 1972. I am second-year law student in Pakistan. I took a course titled Comparative Study of World Constitutions. The first constitution was part of that course was Soviet Union. Yes, there used to be Soviet Union, which is Russia now. Because of the usurping of people's rights, it disintegrated, and now it remains a small country called Russia. And the second one was Germany. Third was Magna Carta, which was which is foundation of the British legal system. And then was Constitution of United States. I got the material, there was no textbook, and I got them from the shop and took the bus to my dormitories, and I placed the documents, the packet of that, on corner of the table. Even today I remember that as soon as I placed those documents, the very first page said 1776, July 1776, Declaration of Independence. said, wait a minute, who declares their independence? And in 1776, rest of the mankind had suffered colonization and all through 1950s. What a nation that is declaring its independence. Plus the word declaration was so awe-striking that is there a nation that declares its independence? The history of colonization is that you're given independence, you protest for independence. The part of the world that I come from, we struggled and struggled up until late 40s, and we were given independence. You protest and you complain and you gripe, and then you're given independence. But this nation is declaring its independence. I stood, and I still remember that sentiment and feeling. I kept reading all of the grievances that were listed, and it seemed like that they all were ours then as well, and the rest of the colonized world suffered the same grievances, same lack of dignity. So my feet were hurting. I took my shoes off, standing, and continued to read Declaration of Independence. Later on, I counted all 1,338 words in one standing. And I was in awe. Next day, I had a friend who was doing his master's program in English literature. I asked him to explain some words that I could not understand. The moment he saw that date of July 1776, of course, that was the time when it was declared. It was drafted a few years before, but he was in same awe that why did the rest of the world waited so long and suffered colonization. But that was my first love affair with the Constitution of United States. After understanding the Declaration of Independence, all 18 grievances that are listed in our Declaration of Independence, somehow number 7 has become my favorite, and I will read that today. The reason is
I don't know which one it is.
the reason
I have to
is
say.
the reason is that it has become so relevant under the current circumstances, and especially after the Supreme Court's decision today. So our Declaration of Independence has 18 grievances. Number 7, let me read this to you. This talks about immigration. Number 7 says, he has endeavored, he meaning the king has endeavored to prevent the population of these states, for that purpose obstructing the laws for naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their migration here. Meaning, in 1776, we were griping that our king was not allowing us to have enough immigration.
Yeah.
The purpose is that this speaks to the spirit of immigration, meaning that immigrants, our forefathers believed immigration enriches the life of a community, of the society. It makes it vibrant, it makes it stronger. Pardon me. Therefore, I was in awe of the Declaration of Independence, and then I read the articles. It made very much sense to me after reading the Declaration when I looked at it: separation of power, due process, our system of our judicial system, how states will function, how federal government will function. It made perfect sense. And then came the best part of it. And even today, I remain in awe of our Bill of Rights. It is titled Bill of Rights, but I call those Bill of Rights as Bill of Human Dignities. I was sharing with you earlier that let's go to the farthest part of this humanity, this world, where nobody has heard of United States or Bill of Rights. And ask the person who has never heard of this nation, this blessed nation, and our Bill of Rights, our Bill of Dignities, and ask that person, do you wish to have freedom of speech? Do you wish to have freedom to practice your faith? Do you wish to have freedom so you can address your grievances in the court of law? And that person will say yes. But where can I find them? And when you tell them that this blessed nation had, in its constitution, had been guaranteed to us, made sure, an amazing wisdom in the words of our First Amendment, I implore all of us to read it one more time after today's conversation. I have done that exercise, meaning that I have read most of the constitutions of the world, written constitutions. There is no other document that guarantees its citizens' rights the way our Constitution does. The first 5 words of the First Amendment are amazing, amazing, amazing. It speaks to the foundation and the mentality of this nation. It says, Congress shall make no laws. Then it lists about freedom of speech, freedom of press, freedom of faith and religion, and all. There are constitutions throughout the world which says the General Assembly or the Parliament or the Supreme Judicial Assembly has right to enact this law, this law, this law, and all that is in benefit of the nation, except United States of America. These fundamental rights, these human dignities were so important, and they remain so important, that we forbade the supreme legislative body of this country. You cannot touch these privileges, these rights, and these dignities. It is that. The reason is that it may be late 1700, but they were very much aware of this concept, and that is what this miracle of our Constitution. Authoritarian people, the world is divided in two sections, and that is what my simple-minded observation is. Those dictators, those who usurp public's, ordinary citizens' rights, those oligarchs, dictators, rulers, undemocratic people, they do not like 2 things. One is freedom of press. Press is their enemy. Turn them off. Close the press. Second is rule of law. It is for these reasons that forefathers made sure that both of those privileges and both of those dignities are enshrined in our Constitution. You can draw the conclusion what we are going through, but the reason I'm so passionate about, because I have lived my childhood under one martial law, my adult life in law school under second martial law, where there was no permission to come out. You cannot step outside without risking your life. You could not speak. I remember the newspapers were shut down. You cannot publish the newspaper because you were criticizing dear leader. He did not like it. The newspaper was shut down. And I remember a publisher of newspaper, he was imprisoned just because he would not publish what was asked of him, meaning praise the dear leader, print his pictures, his photos, then you can only print, and he refused to do that. So freedom of press is a salient feature of our democracy for a purpose. Second was rule of law. These judges are so-called judges. They do no justice. They are partial. Throw them out. I will decide what is good for this country or for my nation. These two traits are of authoritarian mentality, and you can connect the dots, draw the conclusion, but that is not our tradition. We are democratic people, and these values that are enshrined in our founding documents are very dear to us. And there is a reason for that, and they're dear to us because these are universal truths enshrined in our documents. Every nation wishes to have, every human being wishes to have. We are so fortunate that we have them in our Constitution.
You know, I listened to you say this, and I'm part inspired and part embarrassed, because I know that, at least I think, that most Americans who've been born in this country don't grow up with the knowledge that you have, that you've acquired of our own founding documents. And I suppose one question is, what could we do to just take in and absorb the kind of information and the kind of passion you have for our own founding documents? Do you have any suggestions of how this should be taught in the schools, or what we should do?
I don't have suggestion, I have observations. What has taken place, what is taking place is this. Captain Humayun Khan, our son, by the way, as you mentioned, the proceeds of both of these books are dedicated to the scholarship at University of Virginia under Captain Humayun Khan Memorial Scholarship. We received the card from the first recipient of the scholarship, and the recipient writes, and we were so pleased to see, says, "Thank you for making the university education possible for me." So it will remain in perpetuity. Thank you. Thank you.
Let me just interject here. There are just some wonderful descriptions and scenes of your son in growing up, when he was in college, and when he volunteered for the ROTC and went into the service, and your reluctance to go along with his career, particularly when the Iraq War started and you were opposed to it, and he felt that it was his obligation to not so much. It was to his country, but it was also to the people he served with, to his unit. Your descriptions of Humayun's relationship with the people who served him, they were really moving. I recommend that part of the book to everyone.
Yeah. Well, continuing to answer, and I'll come back to it, we recently met somebody that was in Captain Humayun Khan's unit. She served with him in Iraq as well. She reached out to me in Washington, D.C. at one of the events, and she said, "Mr. Khan, I have never spoken about this, but do you recognize this picture?" I said, "Yes." That was Captain Humayun Khan's entire unit, and she was one of them, and he was standing behind. He said, "Mr. Khan, I used to cry. I was so afraid when I was deployed there." And Captain Khan was my commander, and he noticed that I would cry every evening. I was so afraid. He made sure, since he became aware, he came one day and he told me that, "Don't worry, I will protect you." Then every night, every evening, either he will send somebody, he made sure that we will take turns to come and be with me so that I am heartened and all of that. He was so caring, and he, to the last breath of his life, it was in care of others. That University of Virginia taught him, that blessed institute taught him, that blessed school of Thomas Jefferson taught him. So he was totally made in America, all of it. Answering your question about the impact or what how should we move forward with reading of the Constitution, learning about these values. Again, the name of Captain Khizr Khan comes into conversation. He was still in University of Virginia, a student. He wanted to gain admission to a dormitory, Hereford College, which required writing an essay before you are admitted to that particular dormitory. He wrote an essay, and that is so relevant today, and there lies the answer. The title of his essay was "Democracy Requires Vigilance and Sacrifice." It is that's where lies the answer. We had been lax in being vigilant because we are not aware of what is enshrined in our democracy, all the benefits, all the privileges, all the human dignities. We are not beacon of hope for the rest of the world because of our economic might or our military might, not at all. We are beacon of hope because our tradition is those universal truths of equal dignity, equal protection, due process. It is that makes us exceptional people. It is that makes us beacon of hope for the rest of the world. So, vigilance meaning that we must be aware of all of these values that are enshrined in our documents. Because, as I mentioned earlier, the authoritarians, the dictators, they saw last century the spread of democracy, all corners of the world. The democracy was spreading. They did not like it because that was challenge to their control, that was challenge to their monopoly of people's rights and all. So they decided to malign our democracy. Democracy in America must be maligned, and you saw the cyber attack on our electoral system, on our elections, on our way of life, and we are discovering slowly and gradually that how profound that attack had been on our democracy. And as we become aware, people are standing up, people are becoming vigilant, and you will say, offer us the proof. Why you say this, that we are becoming vigilant? Now that we know that our democracy was maligned, our democracy was attacked. I come from Charlottesville, Virginia. Yes, same Charlottesville, where division and hatred was on full display on August 12 and on August 13 when my daughter, I call her my daughter out of affection, Heather Hare, was murdered by a car driver. I was there when I saw the hate on the streets of Charlottesville. But then look, this is the proof. Charlottesville decided we will not put up with this. We will take charge of our destiny. We will take control of our moving forward, of our values, of our Constitution. And on 7th of November, I observed those long lines of mostly women and men and children in tow, standing in line to vote. One thing was noticeable. All of them had sneakers on. They had overcoats because the weather could get colder. They had umbrellas in their hand just in case if it begins to rain. The reason was that they came prepared to take charge of their destiny. That is what democratic people do. We participate. And look what happened in Virginia. We took charge of our destination. We took charge of our destiny. We took charge of our government. We took charge of our assembly. We took charge of our governorship, our attorney general. We showed it to the rest of the country that this is what participation can do. It is that spirit is, this is coming to San Francisco is my 175th appearance before the communities. I have traveled throughout the nation, Portland, Oregon, to night before last I was in Austin Texas. Before then, Kansas City, St. Louis, Des Moines, Iowa, Miami, Atlanta. Wherever I have gone, there had been same sentiment that exists among all of us today. Concern. Where do we go from here? I get that question asked at the end of conversation. Where do we go?
That was one of the questions right here to ask. Among the one of the students' questions was.
And I cite example of Virginia. When we participate, 7th of November is the most sacred day in a freedom-loving beacon of hope nation. We stand up, doesn't matter what it takes, we will cast our vote, regardless of party affiliation, but we must participate. That is one. Second, you saw only 12th of August and 13th of August, Friday night, the demonstration, the ugliest chants on the streets of Charlottesville. But then we decided that we are going to repel and we are going to show our children what real America is. No announcement was made. On Wednesday, from word of mouth, from one family to another family, we decided we will bring our children and we will walk as families on the same path where 2 nights ago there was hate and division on display. Children came, families came with candles in their hand. We marched all the way, went to the sacred ground of University of Virginia. We stood there. We let our children sense what real American value is, where everyone stood shoulder to shoulder. Out of that exercise came a sign which is so prevalent. If you came to Charlottesville, most of the houses have that sign outside their homes. And that sign came after that attack on Charlottesville on 12th of August and 13th of August. That sign reads this: no matter where you came from, you're our neighbor, welcome. It is that.
It's a wonderful
It is that is the result of that display of hate and division. Look at example of Boston. 24 people, hate in their heart and hateful chants showed up in Boston. 40,000 Bostonians came out to repel them. It is that is the spirit of this nation. That is the goodness of this nation that I cherished then in 1972 and I continue to cherish. Our life had been, we are a reluctant participant in this process. But there comes time in person's life, and our time had come, and so the time has come for all of us. You have 2 choices. One choice is we sit home and we do nothing and let be observers, or we participate. Whatever station we have, some of us speak, some of us participate, some of us encourage others, some of us support candidates, some of us join hands and contribute to campaigns and all that. That is all participation. And the times are such at this moment in the history of this nation that we all must participate to preserve and protect our values.
Would you say you're right? You said you've been doing this for about 170 days. That's an astonishing feat. It's an astonishing feat of endurance. We've seen a lot of authors on tour, and some of them wilt after about 17 days, let alone 170.
Coming to San Francisco, this is my 4th trip rather.
Wow.
I have come here before, not because of the books, but continuing to speak to various communities, to the bar and to others. And it must be done. It must be done. We must speak. We must hearten one another and share what is taking place in other parts of the world. I was in Portland, Oregon after I spoke, two ladies in hijab came to me and they said, we want to share something with you. Please tell rest of America. They said to me that we were standing at the bus stop with two of our small children with us, waiting for them to take the school bus. A gentleman from across the street came towards us, and halfway towards us, he extended his hand towards both of us. And this is what he said. He said, sisters, I am with you. Never feel that you are alone. He just walked away.
I'm glad that story had a happy ending.
And they shook their children. They said, see the real America.
Yeah.
And it is that there are event after event throughout the nation that the goodness of this nation is on display. Sometimes we feel so disheartened because what is taking place so loudly and all that, but that will not remain. We have received, I must share this, we have received a letter, thousands of cards you have sent, letters and books and gifts and amazing generosity America has bestowed upon us. There is a letter that I always share, 26-page long letter.
26-page letter?
26. Written by a retired army nurse. She served in Second World War in Europe. In 25 pages, she explains what she did, how it happened, what was going on there, and all of that. Then on 26th page, she tells us, and I never hesitate to mention her 26th page as a reminder to me. She writes, she said, Mr. and Mrs. Khan, please continue to speak. Had there been more people speaking, we could have avoided the Second World War. We could have avoided the atrocities that were committed against our Jewish brothers and sisters. We could have avoided that. We could have avoided the atrocities that were committed by hate against the humanity in Second World War. Please continue to speak. It is that encouragement that reminds us that why it is important for us to continue to speak, hearten one another. We will prevail, we will participate, we will assemble, we will go to vote on 7th of November, and we will take charge of our destiny, the goodness of this nation. So it is such reminders that have, and in the book we write, why did we participate, why did we go to the Democratic National Convention? Reluctant, totally reluctant. We were advised not to go at all. And we went there because of the concern of the small children that were asking me, you're a lawyer, please tell us, are we going to be thrown out of this country? Yeah. Parents would come and tell me, say, please hearten them that that will not happen. But they were worried.
And you also mentioned it was your memory of the spirit of your son who would have wanted you to stand up and do the right thing.
2 days we sat in the room where Captain Humayun Khan's portrait is hung and his other things are on display in our house. And Ghazala and I chatted about that. What would he do? And we concluded, especially that letter that came from 4 children asking us to make sure that Maria is not thrown out of this country. Yeah. We immediately called and we said, we will go.
And of course, you had to go through security. They wanted you to take everything out of your pockets. It might go through a metal detector, and you got at the convention, and what did you find in your pocket?
Well, before we get to, there is something interesting that I must share about Ghazala. After we were given 2 minutes to speak, when we called them, we said, we will come to DNC's convention and we will speak. They told us, you have 2 minutes. Other Gold Star families are speaking, everyone has 2 minutes, and on other days, your turn is on Thursday, so the schedule is very tight, 2 minutes. I said, yes, 2 minutes is more than enough. So I sat down to write my grievances. 1 page, 2, 3, 4, all about...
Just like James Madison.
Yeah, 12 pages. And next morning I told Ghazala, I said, please sit and with the clock. We have 2 minutes, so let me read. Let me read it real fast, see if I can do this in 2 minutes. So I'm reading, it's 5 minutes, it's 10 minutes, it's 18 minutes, and she has never called me Mr. Khan. That day she did. She put the clock down. And she said, Mr. Khan, they will turn the lights off and they will turn your speaker off, so let's cut it down. So I offered her, I said, here, please make sure that you remove whatever you wish. She had been my strength and my editor all of our lives. So this, look at the caliber of this lady that later on was attacked by Donald Trump. This is what she did. My first line was in the speech, these are my words. I have not plagiarized them from Mrs. Obama's speech.
But she cut it out.
She said, no, you will not say that at all. So she took it off, and
I know when your wife says to cut out, you cut it out. I've
off.
had that experience.
so then anyway, that speech came into being, and we were not getting to 260 words. So I worked a couple of more days to shortening the sentences and making it sharper and all that. So now we submitted, it's the protocol that you submit your outline or your comments to the organizers so that they can verify that you're not, saying things that are improper. But anyway, so we are now in San Francisco, in Philadelphia, and we are getting ready to go to the convention. And they had told us that make sure you don't have coins or keys in your pocket because the security is very tight, and it will take longer if you have metals in your pocket. So Ghazala had emptied all of her purse. She only had a wallet with her, and we are walking, and I'm checking my coat pockets and all, and I feel the bulge. I had been keeping this Constitution since 2005 in my pocket. And we tell that story in the book in great detail. So I say to Ghazala, as we are getting in the cab, I said, Ghazala, I have this Constitution in my pocket. The original line in the speech was, you have not read the Constitution of the United States. If you read, look for the word liberty and equal protection. I said, can I change it and say, I will offer you my copy? And she again, because she is so particular about these, and she said, no, you cannot do this. Let's go there and let's take their permission before you change. So, but make sure, because I told her I have Constitution in my pocket, can I pull it out like this? And she said, look what you're doing. You have pulled it out, the face backward. So he said, let's practice. If they give us the permission, let's practice. So we are sitting in the cab, and cabbie is watching us do this. I'm sitting and doing this and
Or you could have
placing
done
it.
it this way.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, too.
You have to hold it from here. So
Yeah,
make
that's
sure
true.
so that's how the Constitution. So we went there, and we, in the green room, because ordinary people like ourselves never have the occasion of speaking to such a large crowd with so much light and noise. So in green room, they let you stand there to get acquainted with the
Right.
lights and all that, so you're not confused when you're on a stage. So throughout this process, I'm asking Ghazala that please speak, say something. And just simply say that thank you for inviting us and honoring our son, and Khizr will speak. But her face is totally red, and she has very high blood pressure. And she's telling me that don't insist. I am afraid that I may fall. I may collapse. And it has happened whenever there had been mention of her son, Captain Humayun Khan especially, her picture. Only mothers know what goes through a heart of a mother. She said, don't insist. So I did not insist at all. I said, okay, I'll speak. And so we asked the producers in the green room that I have this constitution, can I pull it out? And so the senior producer was standing there when we were practicing at the podium, at the green room podium. He walks, he said, are you sure, Mr. Khan, you want to do this? I said, yes. And because of his experience, he realized what impactful moment that would be. He said, go ahead and do that. So that's how that waving of the Constitution came into it.
And I thank you because since then we've sold a lot of pocket copies of the Constitution. You mentioned something here which I had hoped we'd get into, but just briefly, the vignettes and your story of your courtship of your wife is an absolute treasure in this book. It's like something, for someone living in contemporary America, it's such a different story. The number of times you kind of accidentally, on purpose, showed up at the same place she was, and you didn't want to be too pushy, but you just happened to be walking down the same street. All the way up to the point where, and I almost fell off my chair when I read this part, when you got married, you were in Dubai and she was in Pakistan, and you had to get married in absentia. It's amazing story out of a different era, but such a love story. It's just a wonderful story.
Well, we've been married 40 years now, and I'm honored. She's the best part of the family. Captain Humayun Khan was exact replica of Ghazala. Care for others, to own peril, and being concerned about the surrounding, about others, and that's total replica of Ghazala.
And one of the questions I have from the audience is, how are your other two sons doing, and how's the rest of your family holding up?
They're both scientists. They do medical research in Charlottesville. They're graduate of Charlottesville, Virginia. And after their postgraduate schools, they decided to, instead of practicing medicine, the eldest one decided that they will do medical research. So they're doing very well. They're almost there. They're inventing cure for Parkinson and Alzheimer, neurodegenerative disease. And, we are
clap for that one.
We are moving forward with life, and of course, we often, as a commemoration of not having Captain Humayun Khan with us physically, he's there all the time and all that. And that's a personal family secret. If you came to have dinner with us, if it is a very special dinner, there would be an empty chair and a plate on the table, so that he's always with us. Wow. His spirit is always with us, and
just a wonderful family you have, and you've done so much for the country, and it sounds like you're about to do a lot more through the scientific research. Let me just close with one more question, and that's from one of the students here. What would you advise a college student or an individual who feels that the problems of the world are too big for them to solve, but they still feel like they can do something. How could they make the world a little brighter? Just on an individual level, what do you suggest?
Well, we all, lack of resources, that is the story of my life. Lack of resources have never been a hindrance. It took a little while to get where I wanted to get. So that is my personal motto, that if we wish to make a change, if we wish to make something that we are so passionate about, it requires first a step, and then the world joins. And especially to those who, and that is a universal message, that is the story of all those who have made the difference among us in humanity, had been that they started first step and then second step, and then slowly and gradually. Don't try to accomplish everything in one day, in one go. The first step is the first step towards a long journey, and people begin to show up. If you're passionate, if you're faithful to your cause and your purpose, people begin to show up, opportunities begin to come, and you're moving forward beyond your imagination. So that is humbly I suggest in an answer to the question that mankind, and if we read the history and if we look back, mankind never moves like this. Mankind always moves like this. Some of us are ahead, some of us are in the middle, some of us are following behind. And this blessed nation, because of its place, because of its founding values, because of its dignities that it enshrines in its founding documents, is way ahead. And I will share, when I became citizen of this country, as I had mentioned, I have lived under 2 martial laws without any dignities. I had to have a permission of the government to go and buy a bag of rice or bag of sugar, or go to school or not to go to school. The very first thing these martial law administrators, dictators do, shut down the universities, shut down the schools. Anyway, so I have lived under 2 periods of indignities. I am about to take the oath of citizenship of United States. I have studied law. I know how it is, what each and every one of us as human being deserves as human being. And I have lived twice in my life without any of those dignities. And I am fully cognizant what is about to take place, that I am about to become citizen of this nation. I pause. I am at the courthouse, federal courthouse, where citizenship ceremony is to take place. I paused and I reflected for 2 seconds. Twice. Without the dignities that are enshrined in our documents. I walk into the courthouse. There are several other people, and we all take the oath of citizenship, and we are given a certificate. That certificate is called, the title of that certificate is Certificate of Naturalization and Citizenship. That's what the title says. After that reflection, looking at that certificate, I did not, to my eyes, that was not a certificate of citizenship or naturalization. That was certificate of human dignities. Now I had them. Those dignities that I did not have them twice in my life. Now those dignities are guaranteed to me. that no one will prohibit me from practicing my faith. No one will prohibit me from speaking. No one will prohibit me from, if I wish to protest, I can protest. These are basic human dignities that are enshrined in our founding documents. And since then, it's been, there had been difficult times, there had been more effort that needed to be launched, but with hope and with hard work, we are moving forward.
That's wonderful. I think it can all be summed up in the one phrase from your grandfather so many years ago. So what if you're thirsty? Always be a river for everyone. And that's what you are doing. Thank you so much for being here this evening.
Very much. Thank you.